Gurkha is a master of combat and concealment. For example, 10 Gurkhas are hidden in this image. How many can you spot? Trick question. They're already behind you.
Hello everyone and welcome to another video on our own devices. I'm Jean Messier and today's video marks the long overdue conclusion to my trilogy on historic knives. Now today's knife certainly needs no introduction. This is of course the legendary Kukri, a blade inextricably associated with the Gurkhas. Now if you're somehow unfamiliar with the Gurkhas, these are elite units within the British, Indian, and several other armies, composed mainly of soldiers native to the mountainous regions of Nepal and Northern India. Now, the Gurkhas are infamous for being, and let's be informal here, stone-cold badasses, with members of the various Gurkha regiments being awarded no fewer than 26 Victoria Crosses since 1858, with Indian Army Field Marshal Sam Manekshaw famously declaring that if a man says he is not afraid of dying, he is either lying or he is a Gurkha. The Gurkhas, or Gurkhas, first came to Western attention during the Anglo-Nepalese War of 1814 to 1816, fought between the forces of the British East India Company and the Kingdom of Nepal. Impressed by the Gurkhas' fighting prowess, after the war, the East India Company and later the British Indian Army began recruiting Nepalese warriors into what eventually became the first King George's own Gurkha rifles. Ever since, Gurkha units have participated in nearly every major British conflict, including the 1857 Sepoy Mutiny, the 1900 Boxer Rebellion in China, the First and Second World Wars, the 1982 Falklands War, and the recent war in Afghanistan. Today, nearly 96,000 Gurkha soldiers serve in the Nepalese Army, 42,000 in the Indian Army, and 4,000 in the British Army. Smaller contingents of Gurkhas are also active in the Singapore Police Force and the Royal Brunei Armed Forces. Now, if I were to go over the complete history and many legendary exploits of the Gurkhas, we would be here all day, though I may cover the subject in more detail over on Today I Found Out. And indeed, I've already written a video on one of the more recent instances of Gurkha badassery, link in the description. Instead, this being a hardware-focused channel, in this video I will be going over the history and design of the Gurkha's traditional weapon, the Kukri. Now, over the years, a great deal of legend and lore has grown up around this weapon, some of it true, some of it not so much. So without further ado, let's dive right in, see if we can separate fact from fiction, and let me show you what this is, where it comes from, and what it is used for. Now, while today the Kukri is best known as a combat weapon, it is more broadly used as a general-purpose utility blade for clearing brush, chopping wood, skinning animals, preparing food, etc., similar to the Philippine bolo or the Malaysian parang. The exact origins of the design are unclear, but is thought to have been derived either from an ancient Indian saber called the nistrimsa, or possibly the ancient Greek kopis short sword, brought to the subcontinent by the forces of Alexander the Great in the 4th century BCE. Whatever the case, the design of the Kukri is mostly optimized for chopping, with the blade being shaped to concentrate most of the weight over the chopping edge. It also has this distinctive forward curve, which allows for easier chopping, draw cutting, as well as stabbing and slashing in combat with a more ergonomic wrist position. Traditionally, Kukris are handcrafted by members of the kami or blacksmith caste, typically from high-carbon steel recycled from automotive suspension leaf springs. Once the basic shape of the Kukri has been roughed out, it is heated and quenched in order to harden it and allow the blade to better keep its edge. Then the spine of the blade is heated or tempered in order to soften it and increase the blade's overall toughness and impact resistance. Finally, the edge of the blade is honed using a special mixture of crushed quartz and mica, typically collected from the upper slopes of the Himalayas. Now, the front and rear edge of the Kukri are typically more finely honed for more delicate carving work, while the main edge is reserved for chopping. Now, the size, thickness, and curvature of Kukri blades vary greatly from region to region and manufacturer to manufacturer, with Kukris manufactured in western Nepal tending to be thicker and shorter, and those manufactured in eastern Nepal tending to be longer and narrower. Now, some of the more common types of Kukris, typically named after their town of origin, include the Suripate, which has a long, slender blade, the Konra, a larger, heavier blade used for heavy chopping or ceremonial animal slaughter, the Bundune, a shorter, more compact Kukri for household use, the Baspati, a medium-sized, more general-purpose blade, which appears to be the style of these two examples I have here, the Salyani, a more deeply curved sickle-like Kukri unique to western Nepal, and the Daran, the classic military or tactical Kukri. Another common variation is in the number of grooves or fullers on the side of the blade, with the three most common versions being the Angkola or single fuller, the Duichira or double fuller, and the Kinchira or triple fuller Kukri. Now, to address a common myth regarding fullers on all sorts of blades, including this 1893 Spanish Mauser bayonet, you'll often hear people refer to it as the blood groove and claim that it serves to reduce suction when pulling it out of somebody you've just stabbed or to channel blood away from your hand. This is simply not true. The reality is far more mundane. The fuller simply serves to reduce the weight of the blade without unduly affecting its strength. Right, so terminology time. Here are some of the traditional names for the various parts of the kukri. Going front to back, we have the tupa or tip, the pati or bevel, the dar or main edge, the ang or chest, the bitiu or spine, the juro or peak, the kol or groove. Some kukris also have a broader, shallower fuller or chira, but not these particular examples. More ornate ceremonial or decorative kukris may also feature ornate patterns called buta engraved near the kol and brass inlays called brus chapno. This section is the ganti or belly of the blade, and down here is one of the most distinctive features of the kukri, the notch variously known as the karda, kauda, gauda, karua, or cho. Now, the actual purpose of the karda is widely debated, with some sources claiming it is a practical feature that serves to collect and drain away blood or plant sap, preventing the handle from becoming sticky or slippery, while others claim it is purely symbolic, representing the Hindu god Shiva or the hoof or udders of a cow, which of course is sacred in Hinduism. Continuing rearward, we have the shari or rikaso, the unsharpened rear section of the blade, the kanzo or bolster that joins the blade to the handle, the blade tang or paro, and the handle, which come in a variety of styles. This kukri uses a short blind tang held to the solid handle by a combination of tight fit and adhesives, typically a type of tree sap called laha. Sometimes the tang is heated red hot in a forge and burned into the handle, resulting in a tight fit. This kukri, by contrast, uses a full-length tang that is passed through a hole in the handle and the butt plate before its puchar or tip is hammered or peened flat to secure the whole assembly together. Some more modern kukris use a panawal or full flat tang with the same profile as the handle, to which two stales or bend are fixed using brass rivets called kil. The handle itself can be made of various materials, in this case local walnut wood or satisal and water buffalo horn, and is traditionally carved with circular grooves called dora and raised edges called harhari. And finally, at the rear of the handle, we have the distinctive flare, or chata, and the chapri, or butt, or pommel cap. Often this will feature a diamond-shaped hirajornu, or keeper, to help secure it to the tang and handle. And if you're wondering about these circular holes near the juro, this is not original to the blade. Rather, these kukris were once displayed in an officer's mess at the Canadian Forces Base here in Winnipeg, and these holes were used to mount them on the wall. Now, kukris are traditionally carried in a leather or wooden dap or scabbard like this one. And once again, this hole is not original and was used to mount the scabbard to the wall. The traditional names for the parts of the kukri scabbard are the sharir, or main body, the modi, or mauri, or throat, the matilu bag, or upper edge, the talo bag, or lower edge, the juro bag, or peak area, the koti, or chape, a metal protective sheath for the tip of the scabbard, absent on this example, and the pharos, or frog, which includes goli, or belt loops, and tuna, or securing laces, also absent on this example. In addition to the kukri itself, the scabbard also has pockets for a smaller accessory blade, or karda, and a chakamak, missing from this example, which is an even smaller, blunter blade traditionally used to burnish the blade of the kukri or strike a flint to light a fire. Of course, no discussion of the kukri is complete without bringing up one of the most infamous myths surrounding this weapon, the notion that once drawn, a kukri cannot be resheathed without drawing blood, and if the wielder doesn't manage to strike an enemy, he can simply fulfill this requirement by nicking his finger or some other body part before resheathing it. Unfortunately, this is simply not true, or at least hasn't been true for a very long time, the myth likely arising from centuries of exaggeration and wartime propaganda. Indeed, as I said before, this is mainly used as a general-purpose utility tool for chopping wood, preparing food, and other things. So if this rule were followed, then every wielder would become very anemic very quickly. In addition to their use as tools and weapons, kukris also carry great symbolic and ceremonial importance, especially among certain ethnic groups such as the Gurungs, Magars, Rai, and Limbu. It is the traditional knife of Nepal and features in all manner of heraldry, including military badges such as that on this Gurkha topi I have here, and the Nepalese coat of arms between 1962 and 2008. Kukris also feature prominently in several Hindu ceremonies, including weddings and the Dashain festival, in which they are used to ceremonially slaughter animals in honor of the goddess Durga. Many groups also believe that kukris have the power to ward off evil spirits and demons and will place them under the pillows of people suffering from nightmares and other sleep disorders, or cremate them along with their deceased owners. Now, at the same time, of course, these are extensively used in combat by the Gurkhas, often in preference of more modern weapons. Infamously, following one skirmish in North Africa during the Second World War, the commanding officer of one Gurkha unit allegedly dispatched the wonderfully terse combat report, "Enemy losses, 10 killed, our nil. Ammunition expenditure, nil." To this day, Gurkhas are all issued with 2 kukris, a service number 1 or ceremonial blade, and a service number 2 or exercise blade, and still sometimes charge into combat, kukri drawn, shouting the traditional war cry, "Jai Mahakali, Ayo Gurkhali." But while most closely associated with the Nepalese army and the British Gurkha regiments, the kukri is also issued to a number of regular Indian army units, including the Assam Rifles and Garhwal Rifles. It is also notably used by literature's most famous vampire hunting team. Those of you who have read Bram Stoker's classic 1897 Dracula will recall that the titular count is ultimately dispatched using a combination of a Bowie knife wielded by Quincy Morris and a kukri wielded by Jonathan Harker. Well, I'll bet if they just sent one Gurkha to Transylvania, the book would have been around 5 pages long. And that, dear viewers, is a brief overview of the kukri, one of the world's most legendary fighting knives. Now, apologies for my voice today. I've come down with a little bit of a cold, but decided to soldier on regardless in order to get this video out in a reasonable time frame. Now, I will see you next time. Another video where we'll look at yet more fascinating blades and other devices just like this one. Until then, I'm Jean Messi from Our Own Devices. Have a great day.